Hi there, and welcome to the second season of the Humans and AI podcast. In this podcast, we dive into the real-life stories of the top leaders and entrepreneurs within the artificial intelligence, high-performance computing and data center space. These people truly are at the top of their game. We have honest and authentic conversations with all our guests. We'll chat about their career journeys, the highs and the lows, and the lessons they've learned from the mistakes they've made, and the victories they've celebrated along the way. It's all about sharing their experiences and knowledge. We talk about the company they're currently in and how they see the future of the space. So if you're looking for practical advice from people who've walked the same path, or just a little inspiration, you're in the right place. We're going to be releasing new episodes every Thursday, so make sure you stay tuned. Hey John, great to have you here. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome. I mean, we've been talking about you coming on for a little while now, since a bit before Christmas. For the benefit of people that don't know you, are you able to just give us a bit of a helicopter view of who you are, where you're working, your role, and a bit about the business that you're in, and then we'll take it back to the beginning.
Yeah, so my name is Jon Stevens. I'm the CEO of Hot Isle Incorporated, and we are on a mission to democratize compute. And so what that means is that we are building supercomputers and then giving access to those supercomputers to people who, developers, and anybody who wants to rent it, giving them access to compute that normally was locked up behind like government research or higher education, in data centers where, unless you're going to go get a PhD, you probably wouldn't even get access to this compute. It's stuff that, these large companies building this stuff don't normally sell to regular people. So we're kind of in a new class called a neo cloud, which is not quite like the hyperscalers, which are the AWS, Google Cloud, the ones, Oracle Cloud, the ones that you've heard of. We're in this kind of new, smaller class where we're, smaller amount of compute, but very, very, very high-end, powerful compute. So it's a little background.
Rather than going after the big whale enterprise, you're making this accessible to SMBs and senior engineers and what have you. So whether it could be a one-man band or a 50, 100 person SMB, you're targeting that sort of market.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We can help anyone because we now know how to design this compute and deploy it. So we can do very large scale deployments, like help a company that was interested in figuring out how to deploy this high HPC. So we have that kind of consulting arm as well. But we're also doing just general rentals, right? Like anybody who has a credit card and just wants one GPU for 1 minute, we can handle that as well. So,
fantastic. Well,
yeah.
We'll go into more detail about Hot Isle now because we're going to have a lot to talk about there. Obviously keen for people to learn more about the man behind it. So it'd be good to just sort of talk through. Obviously, you've been in IT an engineer for 25 plus years, I think you said.
30
online.
actually.
So 30.
I'm old.
Well, you be both. So you've been doing it a long time. Obviously appreciate you. Like all of us, we get in sort of early doors and entry level sort of roles. But when did you really sort of start finding your feet within this sort of supercompute sort of GPU market space? When did you really sort of find yourself in that space?
Yeah, so my whole life I've been always interested in computers. Don't want to give people that whole like started on an Apple IIe, but I actually did. And so I've always really been interested in deploying computers, using computers, running computers, working on computers. And what really shifted was around 2014. A friend of mine actually was working for a company that was making some of the first Bitcoin ASICs, so Bitcoin mining machines. And so he got me access to some of these chips and I deployed them into my basement in my house in San Francisco. Basement being first level in San Francisco. Some of these houses have like a second level. So it was in my garage, set up some very sketchy wiring and set up these chips in there and started mining. And funny enough, it actually heated the house so much it was cracking the floors. And like, it's just like it had nice hardwood floors and started to see cracks in them. And so, kind of got my taste for actually running hardware through that. And then eventually I found myself living in Vietnam. I had sold everything that I owned, left San Francisco with 2 backpacks and ended up.
How long ago was this, sorry?
In Vietnam. So this was around 2016 or so.
Okay, so not that, 10 years ago, not quite.
Yeah, about that. No, God, it's 10 years.
It's a big change.
Yeah, so, it kind of changed my whole life. And after about a year of living there, I moved to a new apartment. My lease on the first apartment was up and decided to try somewhere else. And I was sitting in the base, or in the first floor of the apartment building was a cafe. And I was sitting there, and this guy sits down next to me, and he's got a Bitcoin book. And I was like, hey, I know about Bitcoin. What are you doing? And so it turns out he and a couple other guys were mining Litecoin. They had gone to China. They had found a company that gave them access to these Litecoin ASICs. And then they went to, strangely enough, the Vietnamese military, which is basically the way in Vietnam the telecommunications run is it's all controlled by the military. And so they went to the Vietnamese telecom, which was, and asked them for data center space and power. And so they had this data center that was on the outskirts of Saigon with tons of power, tons of space. And we started to deploy these ASIC miners into this telco. And it was crazy because it was like, it's all guarded by Vietnamese military. And here we were, some crazy crypto miners doing our thing. And yeah, it worked out really well. At the time,
you would have expected it to be in a military facility for sure.
Definitely not. And so I was like, okay, well, cool. Can I come help you guys deploy your latest shipment? And they're like, yeah, sure. So I went out and I helped them, and they saw how technical I was and a lot more technical than them. And they're like, okay, you're going to be CTO. It's like, wow. Okay.
So you became the co-founder.
Yeah. So I became, it was a very small race, 3 other guys. So I was number 4. And we deployed this compute, and then we grew to another data center. We went to a data center that was a little bit further outside of Saigon, and that was a banking data center. So instead of the telco, now we're in a banking data center, and that ended up being pretty crazy too. So yeah, we did all that, and then 2018 rolls around and crypto crashes and it all falls apart, and like 2 of the 3 guys get kicked out of the country, and probably I don't think they can, maybe one of them can come back, but one of them definitely can't come back. And they ended up having to disappear, and the whole thing fell apart. And so I was kind of sitting around wondering what I was going to do next, and a friend of mine reaches out and he says, hey, come work for this company called Web Cloud. And so I was like, okay, well, what's that? And so that was a joint venture with AMD and Consensus. And Consensus is obviously Joe Lubin's company. He's the co-founder of Ethereum. And it was a mining operation for Ethereum, a GPU mining operation. I was like, okay, well, that's really interesting. I'll do that. But I had never actually really touched GPUs before as a hardware. I definitely never mined on GPUs. But I was like, I'll figure this out. And, just like I did with Litecoin, just like I did with Bitcoin, it's like, how hard could it be? I'll do this. So we ended up planning the company for about a year and a half, figuring out where we're going to deploy it, how are we going to do it, where we're going to get the hardware, and eventually got it deployed, and we grew it from 0 to 150,000 AMD GPUs. Deployed across 7 locations. And that was pretty crazy. It was just in the company is very small, and it was just myself and one other guy that I ended up hiring, doing all the technical aspects of this. And because it was during COVID, we couldn't actually like travel or go to the data centers to do this stuff. So we did everything remotely. We automated everything and made it happen, made it work, and it was quite successful.
And
So
you were still in Vietnam, but these data centers that you had all these AMD GPUs, they were in the US, were they?
they were all in the U.S. Yeah. So part of it was in being in Vietnam and just accessing everything remotely, and then we'd have hired teams on the ground to do the actual maintenance of the machines. And so we had to build processes to be able to even like tell people like, okay, go to a machine in rack 5, row 3, fix GPU 2. So we had to like develop all these systems to be able to track and monitor everything, which we did.
So you built a business remotely with 150,000 GPUs stood up, 100 million revenue, and there was 2 of you.
Well, there's to be clear, right? I can't just so there's 5 co-founders in the company,
Mhm.
and then there's a whole bunch of people in finance and HR and kind of like we had one person that was helping us find power and space, and another person that was helping us with kind of just the day-to-day operations. And then the technical team was really just 2 of us.
So the
So
technical guys, and then you had the operational support to help with the business.
yeah, so the
Mhm.
business side of it was kind of handled for us, but we were like the technical team. I was kind of acting like the CTO, um, and the other guy that's technical, his name's Clint Armstrong. He's the kind of network operations,
Mhm.
and helping me with that side of the business, or that
It's
side of the tech
still
side.
an incredible achievement though, to because I know neo clouds that don't have anywhere near that amount of GPUs, across
Yeah.
anywhere near that amount of data centers, and their team are about 50, 60, 70 odd people already, ranging from support engineers, OpenStack engineers, Kubernetes, HPC guys. How did you get that stood up with the 2 of you? Was it? I mean, I appreciate it was all automated, but I think there'll be a lot of people curious to know how you managed to get that working.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for the software side of things, we use third parties.
Hmm.
So we had some management tools there that we licensed out. Um, Eventually, I ended up having to rewrite a lot of that and build it myself. But automation was really the critical thing there. I wrote a piece of software that ran on every single individual computer, and that software knew how to basically set up the machine, and manage it. And if there was anything wrong with it, or if there was something that needed to be done on the machine, the automation was in that little piece of software that would take care of it. So the GPUs, there was 12 GPUs in each box, and each GPU was individually tuned for best performance, and the software figured out how to get that tuning perfected. And if each GPU has a special vBIOS in it, special software that's running configured for that make and model of the GPU. And so this software would make sure that that vBIOS software was the correct software to run on that GPU. And if machines crashed, or if a GPU failed, which at that scale, it's every day there's failures. then a technician could go to a website and see which GPU, which machine was down, and then go repair it. And we just kind of developed this process around it, and it worked. The real critical thing though was the automation. By making each machine its own smart worker, and intelligent, semi-intelligent, it would eventually be consistent. It would eventually be working. And the software I identified all the problems, and then I wrote software to fix it, to automate the fixing of it. And it was a challenge. It was not easy. Even how do you distribute a piece of software to 30,000 computers on slow networking? So we figured it out and did it. And that's based on a lot of my 30 years of development experience and deploying large-scale systems. I've done it before.
Well,
so
I mean, it's a big achievement. I appreciate you some outsourced teams as well. But to be two of you really internally running it, and look, I appreciate, as you mentioned, the wider business. You had sales and ops and finance and what have you.
No sales, because so we're an Ethereum mining operation. So our customers were effectively transactions on a blockchain. And so we didn't need to sell to anybody. So that was actually one part of the business that was fantastic. Was that was
there already. So
I was there already.
Turning the business to a success, obviously automating all those processes was probably key, and obviously meant that you didn't have to hire lots of people. What were the other things that sort of made that business a success, or was that the primary?
That was it.
Yep.
That was it. My job was to make sure those GPUs were humming along, and as long as they were humming along, they were generating revenue, and that's what I did. And I figured out how to optimize these GPUs. So the first, because GPUs were so new to me, I had to learn all this stuff. I had to kind of figure it out. So the automation of the tuning of the GPUs, I sat there and I hand tuned 10,000 GPUs by myself. And I was like, okay, here's how to get the tuning right. And then once I understood how the tuning worked, then I was able to write code to automate that. And I did something that was kind of unique at the time, which was I reversed the process. So a lot of people try to tune from the lowest settings to the highest settings. You start at the base and then you get better and better and better and better. Well, I already knew the highest settings for the GPUs. I knew what the best results the GPUs should be able to produce. And the failure case for a GPU is that it crashes. So what I did was I set them all to the highest setting, give us the most ROI, crash the most. And I didn't reverse. So it was, start off crashing and then change the settings to go a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. And eventually it would stop crashing. And so because they'd stop crashing, I wouldn't have the software wouldn't have to lower the settings. And so that would be the stable, most ROI efficient settings for the GPU. And that worked really well because then I knew exactly what each GPU could run as. And the reason why I'm saying this is individual is because each GPU is actually a snowflake. They're all unique. It's the silicone in a chip is unique silicone. It's, they make these out of these wafers, and the wafers aren't perfect. And so depending on where you actually cut the chip out of the silicone wafer, right? It's this round disc. So if you cut them out near the edge of the silicone wafer, that tends to be a less reliable piece of silicone than in the center of the wafer. And so it's at that level of scale, right? With 150,000 of these, you're getting chips all over the wafer. So each chip is very unique and individual and will have different characteristics about how you can tune it. And there's a bazillion combinations of tuning that you can do for each chip. And so we did this, and when I'd run my software to automate this tuning, the machines would crash over and over and over again until eventually they would become stable. And at that point, you knew that combination of GPUs in that machine, it was the best tuning for that one. And then there's a lot of other factors in there, like heat during the summer times. When the chips are running hotter, they'll crash more often because they're running at a hotter temperature, or versus the winter time when it'd be cooler. And so, you're getting into like, it's crazy.
150, 150,000 GPUs. I mean, obviously, that's going to expend a lot of energy. So, what did you do around actually? Because obviously, the green energy side of things is huge. Obviously, it's something I'm sure you know a lot about. Was that a problem for you guys, or was that something you were able to navigate?
Yeah, so we were actually based in central Washington, which is all hydropower. So the majority of our compute, we started to move to other states later on in the process, but the majority of our compute was actually on hydropower, either hydro or wind. A lot of it's grid, obviously, but we tried as a company to be as green as possible in this aspect.
Green. You managed to tune it, automate it. I suppose with getting all that automation down to fine art, I suppose at some point you kind of do yourself out of a job, or your value becomes less, does it? I mean, so what happened next?
Well, I mean, we still needed, me to run the systems and make sure everything was okay. But what actually came next was Ethereum switched from proof of work, mining with GPUs, to no longer needing GPUs at all. And so within one heartbeat, within one transaction, within 10 seconds, all of a sudden Ethereum went from needing GPUs to 0 GPUs. And it was amazing. I mean, they pulled it off. There was a lot of questions about whether or not the developers could do it. But they did it. And that actually, the fact that they did it, and then even to this day right now, it's still working and it's still secure. Nobody's hacked it. I think that, they did heart surgery, those developers, and they were successful at it. And it gave me a really huge appreciation for what these developers have done. People love to downplay or shit on Ethereum all the time. It's like, there can only be one. I'm a Bitcoin maxi. But the reality situation is these developers are insanely talented to be able to do that with billions of dollars of money effectively at risk. As a developer myself, I'm so impressed, right?
Bit of admiration there for sure.
Huge amount of admiration, a huge amount of respect. Because if that hadn't have happened, if this hadn't worked out as well as it has, what would we be doing today? So I do still have a lot of faith in Ethereum as a technology because of this. If they could pull that off, what else could they do, right? It's literally a Mars landing. It's literally catching a rocket with chopsticks, right? Like it's that level of engineering, in my opinion, because of the amount of money that was at risk.
So within essentially 10 seconds, what you were doing at Web Cloud wasn't needed, and that opened the doors for you as incredible feat of engineering that those guys did. That meant it paved the way for you to move on to other opportunities. So that
business wound down. So that business wound down. We had tried some other decentralized protocols, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. And so that business wound down. And then about a few weeks after all of that, Joe Lubin, who's co-founder of Ethereum and had started that business, he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, John, you did a good job with the last one. Do you have any ideas for what you want to do going forward?" And so he gave me this amazing opportunity to create what is now Hot Isle. And I took Clint Armstrong. He and I, became very good friends. I had hired him at Web Cloud, and he and I had been very good friends and very successful together. And he and I co-founded Hot Isle together. So two technical people who have a good track record and we know what we're doing. You know, it was, the whole premise was like, hey, we're both open source developers. We want to run a transparent, open, honest, ethical business. And we want to build supercomputers. So what we did before with the Ethereum mining operation was basically kind of very low-end GPUs. We took the cheapest, most ROI efficient GPUs that AMD had, the RX 470, 480 kind of class GPUs, and we deployed those for Ethereum mining. And the problem is that those GPUs were too old. They don't, AI and what's coming down the road all need latest and greatest. They need the hottest, coolest thing. So it's turned into something similar to like a Bitcoin mining race, right? Like the Bitcoin ASICs are continuously getting faster and faster and more energy efficient. And that's what I'm seeing happen with the AI ecosystem as well. Is like, you know, now we're starting to move into direct liquid cooling and you know, everything's kind of getting more efficient and faster and better. And so it's kind of the opposite end of the scale of compute of what we had before. And this new compute is much more novel. It's also equally hard to run. It fails quite a bit. A lot of people don't really talk about it, but the failure rate on a lot of this stuff is really bad. And it requires the support of the companies that are manufacturing it. So, you know, we have a partnership with AMD, we have a partnership with Dell, partnership with Broadcom. Like it's a real collaborative.
Crucial, those
it's very crucial.
Vital. And so obviously, there was a quick high level summary at the beginning. So obviously you're building, you know, a cloud provider, essentially, or a neo cloud, you know, geared towards the SMB market, rather than going after the big enterprise. But also, unlike, you know, a lot of your peers and other companies in the industry, you've really, you know, doubled down on AMD, haven't you, as opposed to going with Nvidia, right? Now, obviously, there are providers that do both and a bit more vendor agnostic, but from what I gather, you're wholeheartedly going down the AMD route. What was the sort of decision thinking behind that?
So, I mean, it started from my previous company, right? Like I've run 150,000 AMD GPUs. I know that they're good hardware, extremely good hardware. The challenge for AMD, though, you know, let me back up. My realization, and coming from kind of a crypto background, is decentralization is something that's really important to me. I really like having control over my own money. I don't want a government telling me what I can do and where I can put it. I've been unbanked several times. You know, living in Vietnam gave me appreciation for even just being able to transfer money across borders, right? Like, and then watching also people who are extremely poor have no chance at being able to lift themselves up because of the financial situations that they're in. So crypto is very near and dear to my heart. I've been involved in it since, you know, 2013, long time. And I think that it's very important. So decentralization is important. Having a single provider for all AI hardware and software is terrifying to me. I think that Nvidia is a monopoly. And, you know, to their credit, like they've done an amazing job, right? Like they deserve every bit of what they have right now because they are the leader. They have the best technology. They have the best software. They have the developer resources. They built the community. They did a fantastic job. I could never say anything bad about what Nvidia has done. I think that they're amazing. But having said all that, there can't just be one company for all of AI. If this is like a transformational is the internet, right? I say this to a lot of people. You know, if Internet Explorer was the only browser we were using, or Windows was the only operating system, or Cisco was the only company making routers for the internet, like these would be terrible outcomes. We should have choice.
No,
and
so
choice
is really important.
Choice is really important, and the competition is important, right? Like it's important for Nvidia to have somebody nipping at their heels, so that they make better products, right? Because that's going to further AI even more. And we want AI to grow. Like I think that that's another transformational technology. I think it's a great technology. So if we continue down this path, we need to have competitors. We need to have viable alternatives. And right now, today, AMD is really that company. So that's why I'm kind of focused on being very, backing AMD, is because I think that they have a right to exist. And I also think that their history, if you look at like what AMD did with their CPU market, right? They were an underdog, and they eventually kind of caught up, right? They haven't completely passed Intel, because Intel is just such a dominant, huge player. But looking at how Intel is now fumbling the ball, I think that AMD has the door's wide open for AMD. So,
and as an alternative, then with AMD, so because obviously the people that don't know much about it, obviously Nvidia is naturally the ones that shout the loudest. Quite frankly,
of course,
you don't have to. It's on the news all the time. You go online, it's
stocks through the roof,
and there's a good reason for it. But obviously AMD, I mean, what is the advantage or the sort of clear benefit for an SMB business that might want to talk to you? Naturally, they're going to go to market and they're going to consider a couple of options. What would be sort of the clear advantage for coming to Hot Isle, that working with AMD, working with sort of Dell and Dell PowerWorks as well, I think it was. Why would you go along with that?
Yeah. So here's the deal: is you let me think about this for a second. So here's the deal: you can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? No Fortune 500 has ever done that. It's like MBA 101, right? Today we're doing that. And so, everybody's just developing for this one platform, and that's really dangerous. And so the advantage number one is to diversify your portfolio, right? Don't just code for a single platform. So having said that, though, it's hard to switch, right? AI developers are writing code at a breakneck speed. They don't want to try something new. They don't even want to think about it because they're so busy just building their applications today and getting things off the ground, and the technology is so new, it's hard. So they don't really want to do that today. But the companies that are willing to diversify their portfolio, they need to have an alternative to go to. And right now, today, that is AMD. And so we want to fulfill that need, right? So we're making these things available for rent by the hour, or, by the minute, actually. You can just pick up one GPU and grab it for a little bit and test your code and see if it works today. Kick the tires. And that's AMD today. Their hardware's good. It's competitive with the MI300X, which is the AMD chip, is competitive with the H100, H200 at the hardware level. Now, AMD's software is a bit of a question. And the thing is, and I had a conversation with a friend recently who kind of pointed this out, is NVIDIA is really a software company that builds hardware. And AMD is the opposite. They're a hardware company that kind of badly write software. So what's happening now, and what's kind of interesting, is that some friends of ours, the semi-analysis group, they wrote an article recently, or published a blog post that kind of ripped AMD to shreds, pointing out that their software wasn't very good. And this got the attention of Lisa. So Dylan, who's the head of semi-analysis, had a meeting with Lisa. And then a few days later, the VP of software, AI software, starts posting on Twitter. It starts being very vocal and very upfront, and says something happened within AMD that week. Somebody got a fire lit under their butt. And so now he's taking charge of everything, and he's being very vocal, and he's like, I'm going to fix this stuff. I'm going to fix the software. I want feedback. I want people to talk to me. I want people to tell me what's wrong. So he's actually out there doing this stuff right now, and things are changing. So one other aspect of this is when we started Hot Isle, we didn't even know if AMD was going to adopt AI at the time. At the time, they weren't even really talking much about it in public. And then October 2023, they released the or started talking about the MI300X. It was released in December. And so we've had this whole past year to watch AMD growth. And over the past year, they've been continuously working on their software, making it better and better. And obviously, they're probably also working on the hardware as well, right? They're going to come out with the 325X, the 355X. So they have a whole roadmap of hardware releases. But software, hardware is hard. Software is like you can iterate on it and make it better. Mm-hmm. And that can change more quickly. So this guy is now actually being way more active. AMD's taking it seriously. Lisa's taking it seriously. They're improving their software. In another year or so, it's going to be a whole different outlook on things. And I think that the people who decide today to start to focus on this will be able to have the alternative in a year. Now, there's some more points around all this, which are really interesting, because it takes time to write software, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to start today on these things. You have to start focusing on it. If you remember, about 6 months ago, there was a huge rush to get access to Nvidia hardware. The prices went through the roof. Yep. H100s became very expensive. Nobody could get access to them. And then all these neoclouds sprung up around it. They're like, oh, market opportunity. And a lot of them are ex-crypto people, right? And they're like, we'll just dump money into this stuff and we'll deploy these things. And so now there's a glut of H100s and the price basically raced to zero.
Yeah.
It went through the floor. And then just recently, Nvidia releases the H200. So the prices of H100s are even cheaper because now people are actually physically selling them, right? They're like trying to offload it and then buy H200s and deploy those. So Nvidia kind of screwed up their whole market. But remember that people forget they have short-term memory loss, that they couldn't get access to this compute. And so what do you think is going to happen again in the future for other NVIDIA products? They're going to have supply chain issues over and over and over again. And so if a company really wants to deal with that and have to pay for that, I think that, they're going to start to look for alternative solutions that are a little bit more consistent. And AMD is going to be that as the underdog, right?
So it's that consistent solution. So obviously it is an alternative. Like I say, there's choice there. Software is improving.
Yeah.
Obviously, at the moment, you're essentially renting. You're able to rent out GPUs. On a really flexible basis. So it's that agility for people coming in. Into partnership with yourself.
Yeah.
What does the future look like for Hot Isle now moving forward? Obviously, it's still early days, but the next 24 month sort of roadmap.
Yep.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so our mission is really to deploy along AMD's release cycles. So as long as we're kind of buying and deploying this compute and getting access to the latest and greatest, then we can give that to developers. And I think that that'll create a really good flywheel effect because, the more developers that have access to this stuff, the more they're going to need our hardware, the more that we'll buy to support them, right? And so we're not trying to be like the other providers where they're deploying, trying to deploy tens of thousands of GPUs. We're just trying to satisfy the demand that we have in front of us and just kind of grow slowly and not be that like VC funded, group that's just, trying to squeeze every dollar out of things. We just kind of want to crawl, walk, run. And that's fine with us. We're not trying to become a bazillion-dollar company.
That demand, because so again, actually, I was speaking to another, neocloud, and almost like a marketplace, right? So they've got all the supply, but then it's like generating the demand, and And without a particularly strong sales organization, it's like, well, got the supply, need the demand, and that's what sort of stunted their growth. Now, I appreciate you're not trying to run before you can walk and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, but
Yeah.
how are you generating and creating those? Is that through partnerships, through the relationship with
Yep.
AMD, or is it just brand awareness already?
Yeah, so all of the above, to answer to that. So we just partnered with a company called Shadeform.ai,
Hmm.
and they enable developers to either through an API or going to their website to spin up one GPU, one Docker container for 1 minute, right? Like
Hmm.
they can spin it up, they can spin it down, they get billed incrementally on that, and they can put a credit card in. And the thing that we learned is that, developers and being developers ourselves, we don't want to talk to anybody. We just want to put a credit card in and go, or we want an API to do these things. We don't want to have to call up some bearded sales guy and talk to him about, working a deal that's, whatever. Like, I mean, it's awful. We just want to put in a credit card and go. And so we're gonna focus on that. And Shapeform is fantastic. It's easy. It works. They get exactly what they want and what they need. So we're gonna focus on that. The other thing that we focus on is uh, working with partners, right? Like with AMD. So getting them to, obviously developers go to them looking for advice. And AMD can pass those referrals on to us as well as other neoclouds as well. I'm sure they're very fair about all these things, and they just offer out like, okay, go talk to these three or whatever, and or go to our website and there's a list of them there. And we're on that list, by the way. So it's word of mouth, it's social engagement, it's community building. We created a subreddit for the MI300. And that community is now a little over 500 people. So, these things are kind of growing over time. I'm very active on Twitter and Hacker News and Reddit and LinkedIn and,
Hmm.
just trying to build brand awareness and continue to grow. So,
It's an exciting model, isn't it? I think you're not being constrained by the need for constant investment. I mean, obviously, of course,
yeah,
investment is important,
yeah,
but it's chasing those big deals, chasing that large customer.
that's
Actually,
exactly
what it
it.
is it sounds like you're being quite true to the values of the business,
Yeah. Well,
and letting it just grow like that.
yeah, that's exactly it. Is just kind of grow with revenue, right?
Hmm.
We don't have to undercut ourselves
Hmm.
to grow things. We're very small. It's currently 3 people. And again, we're doing the automation thing. So
Hmm.
Clint has now automated all of our networking, all of our deployments. We can spin up and down servers in a matter of minutes. It's all done with code. This way, it's also more secure.
Hmm.
We don't have mistakes in our networking. The machines are all super isolated. We're in a super amazing data center. It's run by a company called Switch.com.
Yep.
And this is where another very large hyperscaler is co-load, right? Like we're top tier. All of our machines are in biometric cages. It's physically they're literally underground. So I mean it's like military grade security. So we're taking it. We're basically delivering a hyperscaler product, but more tuned towards developers and people who don't need 1,000 GPUs. They just need a few GPUs. And I think that there's a long tail business in that.
And obviously, you've got that experience of 150,000 GPUs.
Yep.
Also appreciate this is a slightly different beast. You're automating, so you can scale.
Yep.
I mean, where do you see this sort of business going in terms of that kind of scale? Do you see it getting that way, or is this going to be remaining at a smaller, more, I wouldn't even want to call it boutique, but just that more sort of focus on the individual developers, focus on the SMBs, and more, use it on demand sort of service.
Yeah, I mean, I like to liken us to like a Ferrari dealer, right?
Yeah.
In a land of Honda dealers, we're the Ferrari dealer, and so our pricing is a little bit higher because we have higher costs, being in such a great data center and using all this amazing Dell equipment and everything else. We also have support contracts on our gear, so this is something a lot of these other neoclouds don't do. Is they try to cut costs as much as possible to ROI and make their VCs happy. We actually get support contracts, so our downtime is minimized to like a day or two. So we can turn around, get things back up and running right away, thanks to our partnership with Dell, right? And their pro support, So yeah, I mean, like we're more just concerned with getting customers onto the machines that we have and filling those up and focusing on that, and then making sure that they're super happy and being very boutique and very white glove service, very hands-on, and very helpful to them. We also have a lot of resources at our disposal. So like because of these partnerships that we've formed with AMD, Dell, Broadcom, we can reach out to them directly and get developer support from them very quickly. We have all the back channels for that as well. So that we can pass that on to our customers. And if they have questions or if they have concerns that are, even more technical than what we can help them with, we can give them the resources. We've also built some communities, like we have a private Slack with like over 30 people now in it that are like some of the top AI, top GPU AI people in the industry, and that room has been invaluable because there we can really get the support. So
and I think we're seeing that now. I mean, humans in AI, right? That's essentially becoming a community.
Yeah,
that use of community is becoming even more and more important today than it's ever been, and particularly within this marketplace as well. So I can see why that additional value that an individual or a small business will get by coming into into Hot Isle. So it's not just the fact they can rent some GPUs; it's the expertise and the support that comes with it.
That's exactly it. And because these GPUs are not, AMD is trying to catch up right now, right? Everybody admits it. It's like we're not trying to sugarcoat the fact that AMD is behind, or that their software has problems. We all admit it. We all know it. We all understand it. So we have to kind of work together as a community to help improve these things for that larger mission of not being reliant on a single provider for all of AI. I mean, that just to me is like the most bonkers thing imaginable. I can't imagine me stuck using Internet Explorer. Like that's the path that we're going down today, and people are not really talking about it too much. I feel like, or at least not enough, in my opinion.
To be fair, I think you're right. I mean, look, just a quick summary then, just from where we are. The key to your success is in two previous businesses, but more importantly now where we are today with Hot Isle is you're automating the hell out of this business.
Absolutely,
it's working really.
It's the only way to do it. Yeah.
So you've got the automation, the tuning going. You've got that tight partnerships with AMD and Dell and sorry, you mentioned
Broadcom. Broadcom is
So
the networking. So the between the node communication is very important, right? So Nvidia's done a great job with their InfiniBand products, right? So each node can talk very quickly. So Broadcom is fantastic because they're doing a standards-based solution, which is Ethernet, what we've all been using to talk on the internet forever now. Whereas Nvidia has their proprietary solution, which is amazing because it's proprietary, but then you're vendor locked into Nvidia, and that's something that again is very dangerous. We want to support open standards, and one bit of my history too, I don't think we quite covered, is that I co-founded the Java at Apache group. So I'm the one who kind of helped create the whole Java on the server ecosystem that turned into a multi-billion-dollar industry that was all part of the work that myself and some other people did. This is my core foundation. Like, I did this in my 20s. Like, this is what we, open systems and open access and open source and open code, like all this stuff is my core foundation. And Hot Isle is a just extension of what, I've been doing my entire life. So that's our entire mission focus.
In that case,
support that.
People listening to this then, that equally are passionate as you are about open systems, that want to learn more about AMD, learn more about how maybe they can work with you, essentially if they're needing some GPUs or understand more about your service, I'm sure you welcome them to reach out to you directly.
Absolutely.
So for sure.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it.
It's been fascinating, and it's great to see a business that really is staying true to the values. And really focusing on that quality of service as well. So I'm looking
customers
forward to
happy.
Happens. Absolutely, we've got to make the customers happy. I think we're all doing with that one. But look, I'll let you go. But it's been fantastic, and we'll have to revisit this in a year and see how it's going.
Yeah, let's see. It'll be interesting.
Brilliant.
I'm super excited.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really enjoyed the conversation and I hope you did as well. Jon shared his journey from his early computing interest to leading a company focused on making supercomputers more accessible for everyone. This episode was brought to you by Asobi. I'm the founder and managing director, and it's our mission to connect the best talent with the most exciting scale-ups in the artificial intelligence, machine learning and data center space. If you're looking for more practical advice or inspiration from those that have been there and done it, stick with us. We're releasing new episodes every week, so don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us over on LinkedIn. You won't want to miss a thing. Thanks again, and see you next week.